if you have ever seen a documentary about the Korowai people of Papua, Indonesia. You have seen a house, perched on a single tree, 45 meters above the jungle floor, higher than a 10-story building. No scaffolding, no safety net, just wood, rope, and an extraordinary understanding of the forest. And your first question was probably the same as everyone else's. Why? The historical answer is protection. The Korowai built high to stay out of reach of rival clans and to guard against the Kakua, which in their belief system are evil witches who take human form and cause sudden, unexplained deaths. Living 45 meters up means living without the constant assault of bites, without the fever, without the slow death that malaria brings. Height is medicine. The real Korowai story is not about height. It is about the sago palm. Their entire world revolves around this single tree. The starch from its trunk is their primary food. The leaves become their roofing. The bark becomes their flooring. And when a sago palm dies and begins to rot, it becomes a nursery for the sago grub, a fat, white beetle larva that the Korowai consider one of the finest things you can eat. Rich in protein, with a creamy texture that melts when cooked over fire. Their architecture, their diet, their spiritual life, all of it grows from the same root. The sago palm is not just food. It is the foundation of their entire civilization. However, many of the impossibly high tree houses you see on television today were not built for the Korowai to live in. They were built for the cameras. Foreign film crews commissioned them. The Korowai, who are extraordinarily skilled builders, constructed them because they were paid to. Most of the community today lives in government-encouraged villages on the ground. If you were visiting the Korowai, would you sleep in the treehouse or stay on the ground? Comment number 1 for treehouse, number 2 for ground. As usual, the content in this video has been compiled and referenced from various sources. If there is any inaccurate or missing information, please leave a comment below to share your feedback with us. Thank you very much. Now, I want to take you somewhere that scientists have described as aliens. The Danakil Depression in northeastern Ethiopia sits roughly 125 meters below sea level. It is one of the lowest, hottest, and most geologically active places on the planet. Temperatures here frequently exceed 100 degrees Fahrenheit, sometimes reaching over 122 degrees Fahrenheit. The ground bubbles with acid pools of neon yellow and green. There are active lava lakes. The air smells of sulfur. NASA has studied this place as a reference point for what life might look like on other planets. And the Afar people have lived here for centuries. The extreme heat causes water to evaporate at a rate that leaves behind something extraordinarily valuable: pure, flat slabs of salt. Every day, Afar men lead their camel caravans, called the Azalai, across the scorching flats to mine these salt blocks by hand. They cut them into uniform rectangles called amole, load them onto camels, and transport them up the escarpment to the highland markets. Until the 20th century, the amole salt block was not just a commodity in Ethiopia. It was the official currency of the country. The Afar were not just surviving in one of the most hostile environments on Earth. They were minting money. And then there is the code of hospitality. The Afar people follow a strict social law called FEMA. If you are a guest in their territory, they are bound by obligation to share their water with you, to feed you, and to protect you with their lives if necessary. In a place where water is the most precious resource imaginable, where every drop is survival, they will give you theirs before they take it themselves. If you had to spend one night here, what would scare you most? The heat, the sulfur air, or the lava? Let us know in the comments. We read every single one. At 5,100 meters above sea level, La Rinconada in the Peruvian Andes holds the record for the highest permanent human settlement on Earth. The air contains roughly half the oxygen available at sea level. Altitude sickness is not a risk here, it is a daily condition. Headaches, nausea, and difficulty breathing are simply part of waking up. But people do not come to La Rinconada for the view, they come for gold. Frozen Mountain lies one of the most significant gold deposits in South America, and the system by which the miners extract it is one of the most brutal economic arrangements still practiced anywhere in the world today. It is called the cachorreo system. Under cachorreo, a miner works in the tunnels for 30 consecutive days without receiving a single cent of payment. 30 days of breathing toxic air, working in freezing darkness, risking cave-ins and mercury poisoning, for free. On the 31st day, he is allowed to carry out as much raw ore as he can physically lift onto his shoulders and walk out with. That ore might contain enough gold to change his life, or it might be worthless rock. He will not know until he processes it. Every month is a gamble, and the house always has the advantage. The women of La Rinconada face a different kind of exclusion. They are forbidden from entering the mine shafts entirely. A deep-rooted superstition holds that a woman's presence underground will cause the gold to disappear or bring catastrophe to the men inside. So instead, the palaqueras, the women sorters, work on the frozen slopes outside the mine entrance, sifting through the discarded tailings, the waste rock already processed and thrown away, searching for overlooked specks of gold with their bare hands in sub-zero temperatures. And yet, inside the mine, the Catholic faith that dominates the surface gives way to something older. The miners pray to El Tío, the lord of the underworld. They leave him offerings of coca leaves, cigarettes, and pure alcohol at small shrines inside the tunnels. They ask him to reveal the gold. They ask him to hold the mountain up. Because in La Rinconada, God lives above the clouds, but El Tío lives in the dark with the men who need him most. The name Oymyakon translates roughly to unfrozen water, a reference to a thermal spring nearby that stays liquid even in the depths of winter. Minus 96 degrees Fahrenheit. That is colder than the surface of Mars on an average day. At that temperature, the moisture in your breath freezes before it leaves your mouth. Metal becomes brittle, rubber shatters, and if you turn off your car engine, you may never start it again. In July, Oymyakon can reach over 86 degrees Fahrenheit. The same village that experiences minus 96 in winter can be genuinely warm in summer. The temperature swing across a single year can exceed 180 degrees Fahrenheit. No other permanently inhabited place on Earth experiences a climate range like that. The people of Oymyakon do not just survive one extreme, they survive two completely opposite extremes, back to back, every single year. Their diet is a direct product of the permafrost beneath their feet. Because the frozen ground makes agriculture nearly impossible, the Yakut people of this region built their food culture around what the cold preserves, rather than what the earth grows. Their most beloved dish is stroganina, long, thin ribbons of raw, frozen river fish, typically whitefish or omul, shaved directly from the frozen block and dipped in salt and pepper. It dissolves on the tongue like ice cream. The cold did not defeat them. They turned it into a cuisine. In the South Australian outback, there is a town where the summer sun is so brutal, so relentless, that the residents made a collective decision at some point in the town's history. They would simply stop living above it. Coober Pedy is the opal mining capital of the world, producing more than 80% of the global supply. It is also the only town on Earth where a significant portion of the population lives underground. Not in caves, but in dugouts, hand-carved homes built directly into the sandstone hillsides. And before you picture something cramped and dark, let me correct that image immediately. The sandstone of Coober Pedy is a natural insulator of remarkable efficiency. While the surface bakes at 122 degrees Fahrenheit, the temperature inside a dugout home stays at a consistent 73 to 77 degrees Fahrenheit year-round. No air conditioning required. No heating in winter. The Earth itself is the climate control system. Some of these underground homes are extraordinary. High, arched sandstone ceilings, open-plan living areas, underground swimming pools, wine cellars that require no refrigeration because the ground keeps them at the perfect temperature naturally. There is an underground hotel, an underground church, and an underground art gallery. And if a family needs more space, they do not call a contractor. They rent a tunneling machine and carve a new room directly into the wall. And here is the detail that makes Coober Pedy unlike anywhere else on Earth. Sometimes, while digging that new bedroom, they find opal in the wall. The renovation pays for itself. They also have a golf course. It has no grass. Not a single blade. The fairways are packed with desert dirt, and every golfer carries a small square of artificial turf in their bag to place under the ball when they tee off. They play at night, under floodlights, to avoid the heat. Coober Pedy did not adapt to the desert. It went underneath it. Let me ask you something before we move on. What would you consider the biggest problem for a community that receives the highest rainfall on Earth? Flooding, perhaps? Waterlogged fields, constant dampness that rots wood and breeds disease. You would not guess water shortages. And yet, that is exactly the paradox that defines life in Mawsynram, a village in the Meghalaya state of northeastern India, officially recognized by the Guinness World Records as the wettest place on Earth. Mawsynram receives an average of nearly 12 meters of rain every single year. To put that in perspective, London receives roughly 0.6 meters annually. Mawsynram receives 20 times that amount. During the monsoon season, the rain does not fall. It attacks. The winds are so powerful and so relentless that a standard umbrella becomes useless within seconds. It would be torn inside out and destroyed before you cross the street. So the Khasi people of Mawsynram invented something better. They weave the knup, a large turtle shell-shaped rain shield made from bamboo and dried broom grass. It is worn over the head and draped across the back and shoulders, covering the entire upper body like a portable roof. The design is aerodynamic, allowing wind to pass around it rather than catch it. And because it sits on the body rather than being held in the hand, both hands remain completely free. A farmer can plant rice in a torrential downpour. A woman can carry goods to market. A child can walk to school. All of them completely covered, both hands working. It is one of the most elegant pieces of functional design produced by any culture anywhere in the world. And almost no one outside of Meghalaya has heard of it. Despite receiving nearly 12 meters of rain per year, Mawsynram suffers from severe water shortages every dry season. By December, the taps run dry. The rivers shrink. The community struggles to find clean drinking water. The reason is the terrain itself. The hills of Meghalaya are steep, rocky, and largely unable to absorb or retain water. When the monsoon arrives, the rain does not soak into the ground. It cascades down the slopes at tremendous speed and drains directly into the plains of Bangladesh far below. The water is there for 4 months, and then it is gone, and the land holds almost none of it. The wettest place on Earth is thirsty for half the year. And then there are the living root bridges. The Khasi and Janchia people of this region discovered centuries ago that the roots of the Indian rubber tree, if guided carefully over many years, will grow across a river and fuse together into a natural bridge, strong enough to hold dozens of people at once. Some of these bridges are over 500 years old. Some span more than 30 meters. They do not rot in the rain. They do not rust. They do not weaken with age. They get stronger every year as the roots continue to grow and intertwine. Rising from the plain of Thessaly in central Greece are enormous columns of sandstone, some of them over 400 meters tall. It is shaped by millions of years of erosion into forms that look less like natural rock and more like the fingers of something buried beneath the earth, reaching upward. And balanced on top of these columns, seemingly defying gravity and common sense, are monasteries. Full, functioning monasteries with chapels, libraries, kitchens, and gardens, perched on surfaces so narrow and so high that the clouds sometimes pass below them. The tourist buses visit the 6 large monasteries that are still active today. They are magnificent, but they are not the full story. If you look carefully at the sheer rock faces below the main monasteries, you will see something that most visitors miss entirely. Small wooden balconies, ladders jammed into cracks in the stone, natural caves halfway up the cliff face, barely large enough for a single person, fitted with just enough wood and rope to make them habitable. These are the bandovas, the hermit caves, used by ascetic monks who found even the monasteries at the top too crowded, too comfortable, too connected to the world below. These monks would retreat to the bandovas for weeks or months at a time, fasting, praying, and existing in a silence broken only by wind. Some of them are still used today. And then there is the question of how anyone got up there in the first place. Until the 1920s, there were no steps carved into the rock, no paths, no roads. The only way to reach the monasteries was to be placed inside a large rope net and hauled up the cliff face by a hand-operated windlass, a simple winch mechanism, while dangling hundreds of meters above the ground. Supplies, food, building materials, and people all went up the same way. Visitors who made this journey reportedly asked the monks the same question every time. How often do you replace the ropes? The answer was always the same. Only when the Lord lets them break. But Meteora is not only a story of faith and architecture. It is a story of cultural survival. During the centuries of Ottoman rule over Greece, the Greek language, the Orthodox Christian faith, and Greek cultural identity were systematically suppressed in the valleys and towns below. The monasteries of Meteora, unreachable and uncontrollable, became something extraordinary. They became secret schools. Hidden inside the monastery walls, Greek children were taught to read and write in their own language, to learn their own history, to practice their own faith. The inaccessibility that made Meteora seem like an act of madness was, in fact, the very thing that kept an entire civilization alive. Ethiopia appears on this list twice, and it deserves to. Most people who know Lalibela know it as an archaeological wonder. 11 churches, carved not from blocks of stone, but directly downward into the living rock of the Ethiopian plateau. Some of them over 800 years old, still standing, still structurally sound, still in active use every single day. But what the photographs cannot show you is what it feels like to move between them. The 11 churches of Lalibela are connected by a network of subterranean trenches and tunnels carved into the rock. Some of these passages are wide enough for 2 people to walk side by side. Others narrow to the width of a single body. And the most famous of them, the tunnel connecting Biete Gabriel Rufel to Biete Mercurios, is in complete and total darkness. No light enters. You feel the stone walls with your hands. You cannot see the person in front of you or behind you. You move forward entirely by touch and faith. This tunnel represents the passage through hell. When you emerge into the light of the church on the other side, you have symbolically arrived in heaven. And then there is Abuna Yamata Gu, in the Tigray region to the north. This church was not carved downward into the earth. It was carved horizontally into a sheer cliff face, roughly 2,500 meters above sea level, accessible only by climbing a near vertical rock face with no ropes, no handholds cut into the stone, and no safety equipment of any kind. The final approach involves crossing a narrow rock ledge above a drop of several hundred meters. Every Sunday, the congregation climbs it. Elderly men and women, mothers carrying infants on their backs, children who have been making this climb since before they were old enough to understand what a church was. They do it barefoot because you remove your shoes before entering a sacred space, and the sacred space begins at the base of the cliff. When asked about the danger, the priests of Abuna Yamada Gu give an answer that has been consistent for centuries. If your faith is strong, God holds you to the rock. If you fall, it is because you doubted. Centuries before modern telescopes existed, the Dogon people of the Bandiagara Escarpment possessed detailed knowledge of the Sirius star system, including the existence of Sirius B, a white dwarf companion star invisible to the naked eye and not confirmed by Western astronomy until 1862. But the daily genius of the Dogon is found not in the stars. It is found in their architecture and in a single, brilliantly designed building at the center of every village. It is called the Togu Na, which translates as the House of Words. The Togu Na is an open-sided shelter where the men of the village gather to discuss community affairs, resolve disputes, and make collective decisions. It is the parliament, the courthouse, and the community center of Dogon society, all in one structure. And its most important feature is its roof. The roof of the Togu Na is built from 8 layers of millet stalks, stacked thick and low. So low that it is physically impossible to stand upright inside. An adult man must remain seated at all times. If a dispute becomes heated, if voices are raised and tempers flare, and a man's instinct is to stand up and confront the person across from him, the roof stops him. He hits his head. He is forced back into his seat. The architecture itself enforces calm. The Dogon built conflict resolution into the ceiling height of their meeting house. Their granaries carry an equally sophisticated social logic. Men and women maintain entirely separate granaries. The man's granary holds the family's grain supply, the food that feeds everyone through the dry season. But the woman's granary is hers alone. It holds her personal goods, her jewelry, her trade items, her savings. A husband is not permitted to look inside his wife's granary without her explicit permission. In a society with no banks, no legal contracts, and no formal financial institutions, the woman's granary is her economic independence, protected by social law that everyone respects. And finally, we arrive at the end of the world. Literally. Tristan da Cunha is a British overseas territory located in the South Atlantic Ocean, roughly equidistant between South Africa and South America. It is the most remote permanently inhabited archipelago on Earth. The nearest land with a significant population is St. Helena, the island where Napoleon was exiled, and that is still 2,400 kilometers away. There is no airport on Tristan da Cunha. There is no way to fly in or out. The only way to reach the island is by ship, and the journey from Cape Town takes 6 days in each direction, through some of the roughest seas on the planet. Supply ships come only a handful of times per year. If you have a medical emergency that cannot be treated on the island, you wait for a ship. Approximately 250 people live in the only settlement, a village called Edinburgh of the Seven Seas. Because the entire current population descends from just 15 original settlers, the genetic pool of Tristan da Cunha is extraordinarily narrow. Almost everyone on the island shares one of only 7 family names: Glass, Green, Hagen, Lavarello, Repetto, Rogers, or Swain. When you meet someone on Tristan da Cunha, you are almost certainly meeting a cousin. No one on the island owns land, not a single square meter. All land is communally held by the islanders as a collective. You cannot purchase property on Tristan da Cunha, regardless of how much money you have. A billionaire and a fisherman stand on exactly equal footing when it comes to the ground beneath their feet. And several times a year, the entire island participates in what they call Potato Patches Day. The community's potato fields are located several miles from the village, and when planting or harvest time arrives, the whole island shuts down. Every able-bodied person climbs onto tractors and rides out together to work the fields. There are no exceptions based on wealth or status. The potatoes feed everyone, so everyone plants them. In the most isolated community on Earth, the answer to survival was not competition. It was the complete elimination of it. So here we are, 10 places, 10 communities. 10 entirely different answers to the same fundamental question that every human being who has ever lived has had to answer in some form. How do you survive in a world that was not built for you? The Korowai built their entire civilization from a single tree. The Afar turned a landscape that kills outsiders within hours into an economy that sustained an empire. The miners of La Rinconada gamble their health and their lives every month for the chance at something better. The monks of Meteora hang their faith and their culture on ropes above a 400-meter drop. The people of Tristan da Cunha decided, collectively, that the only way to survive the most isolated place on Earth was to make sure no one person owned more of it than anyone else. We spend enormous amounts of energy trying to make the world more comfortable, more predictable, more controlled. And there is nothing wrong with that. But when you look at the communities in this video, the ones who built their culture around a salt flat, or a frozen river, or a cliff face, or a communal potato field, you notice something. The harshness of their environment did not diminish their humanity. In many cases, it concentrated it. It forced them to develop codes of hospitality, systems of fairness, and forms of beauty that softer conditions never demanded. So the real question is not how they survive in extreme places. The real question is what we have quietly lost by making our own world so easy to live in. If this video made you see the world differently, leave a comment below and tell me which of these 10 places surprised you the most. And don't forget to hit subscribe, turn on notifications bell so we can see you again in our next video. Thanks so much for hanging out with us today. I hope you enjoyed it. Your support truly means the world. Wishing you the best of luck.